Senator, we'll start with you. Inflation is at generational highs, could be going even higher considering OPEC's actions here this week regarding the crude production. Why are consumer prices so high? What have you done to address this issue?
Yeah, first of all, Ted, let me start by saying, as a kid, I remember my mom sitting at the kitchen table, with all the bills spread out with one of those giant calculators, trying to figure out, what bill is she going to pay? And it was really challenging for her. In that period of time, she could only put about $2 of gas in the car, at the time. So I know what people are going through, and I know it's hard. That's why I've worked to cut costs. Hey, when the Biden administration refused to increase oil and gas production, I told him he was wrong. And when prescription drugs are just skyrocketed and seniors can't afford it, I stood up to Big Pharma to cut costs. Now, my opponent, Blake Masters, the issue we have here is that this issue affects seniors more than anybody else, seniors that are on a fixed income. And my opponent, he wants to privatize Social Security. He said private accounts sending your earnings to Wall Street. I met this older gentleman in Parker not too long ago, and he came up to me and he said, hey, please do not take away my Social Security. I don't know what I will do. For however long I'm in the United States Senate, I'm going to protect your Social Security and Medicare. My opponent said he wants to cut the knot and privatize your Social Security, sending your hard-earned dollars to Wall Street.
Blake Masters, 90 seconds. We're talking inflation here. Why is inflation? Why are consumer prices so high, and what would you do about it?
Let's be clear. The greatest threat to seniors' retirement today is the massive, crushing inflation that Joe Biden and Mark Kelly caused. And it's their fault. They caused it. 2 years ago, inflation was 1.5%. Now, in the greater Phoenix metro area, we are suffering from literally the worst inflation in the nation at 13%. Joe Biden's policies caused this, and those are policies that Mark Kelly in Washington has supported every single time. So look, first, they declared war on oil and gas. Well, what did they think was going to happen? When you declare war on oil and gas in a country that is still mostly powered by oil and gas, you think that's going to send the price of energy to the moon? Well, yeah, it did. They took gas from $2 to $6. Now they want a prize because it's back in the $5. No, when you make energy too expensive, well, everything you need to live takes energy to make or to move. You make energy expensive, you get some inflation. That was the left hook. Well, the Democrats weren't done. Then they decided to print $6 trillion. They print and spent $6 trillion too quickly. The normal person understands that. PhD economists don't, apparently. Senators don't. But when you print $1 trillion, that makes every dollar in your wallet worth less and less. It sends prices at the supermarket skyrocketing. So no, they caused this crushing inflation, and it is ruining people's lives. I had parents come up to me 2 weeks ago at a campaign event. They said, Blake, we don't eat breakfast anymore. We drink coffee. We drink coffee so that we can afford to feed our kids breakfast. And that's on you, sir. This is the Joe Biden, Mark Kelly economy. I will put a stop to Joe Biden's crazy spending.
Mark Victor, 90 seconds. Inflation, what's going on?
Look, people are hurting right now. Inflation hurts the poor the worst. It's a tax on everything. Why is this happening? It's happening because of both the Republicans and the Democrats. It's their foolish economic policies. Look, don't confuse money with wealth. They're not the same thing. Wealth, that's what's produced and what's consumed. Printing and distributing money doesn't make us richer. Doubling the money supply doesn't make us twice as rich. Printing money results in more dollars to buy the same amount of goods, and that's what raises prices. Both the Republicans and the Democrats, both of them have been recklessly printing money. It's not just this administration. It's Bush, it's Obama, it's Trump, it's Biden. They have all increased spending. They have all increased the debt. The Republicans just had control of everything. They increased spending, they increased the debt. This has been exacerbated, by the way, by forced business closings during COVID. These are probably unconstitutional, but they messed up our supply chain and it contracted the number of goods. When you print more money and throw it in the economy and you reduce the supply of goods, what you get is out of control inflation. And no, you can't just pass more spending and call it the Inflation Reduction Act and think you are going to fix inflation. You know what fixes this? Free markets. That's what raises standards of living. We need to cut taxes. We need to cut spending. We need to cut regulation. We are stealing from future generations. It's obscene, it's immoral, and it needs to stop.
All right. I want to move to abortion. Senator Kelly, we'll start with you. Would you codify Roe v. Wade?
Of course. Let me be perfectly clear. Arizona women have totally lost the right to make a decision about abortion. It's devastating. It's wrong. And it's exactly what my opponent, Blake Masters, wants. Blake Masters has called abortion demonic, religious sacrifice. He's even said that he wants to punish the doctors. He wants a national abortion ban that's so strict that even in the case when a woman is raped, she will not have the option to make this decision. Now, in a second, he's going to tell you that this isn't true. But folks, this is true. These are his words. He has supported state and national abortion bans that will deny the right for a woman to make this decision by themselves. And that's what it's about for Blake. I mean, he's only saying this now, and he's probably going to tell you something totally different. And it's only because he's trying to win an election. But that's what it's about for him. You know, he thinks that he should make these decisions for you. He thinks he gets to make these choices instead of you.
Blake Masters, 90 seconds here regarding a federal ban on abortion, codifying Roe v. Wade. Where do you stand?
I'm pro-life, and that means I believe in limits. Now, I support exceptions because I don't believe in being extreme on this issue. Senator Mark Kelly is the abortion radical. Senator Kelly in Washington, he voted, actually he sponsored, he didn't just vote for it, he sponsored a bill that would have mandated legal abortion nationwide, get this, up until the moment of birth. Take a second to think about how truly radical that is. Mark Kelly says any abortion is okay for any reason, all the way up until the moment a baby is due to be born. He wasn't the only radical who voted for that bill. He was joined by Elizabeth Warren, by Bernie Sanders. AOC voted for this in the House. And the only countries in the whole world that support Senator Kelly's preferred no limits extreme abortion policy are China and North Korea. So no, I'm pro-life. I believe in limits. I think we should be more like, how about every other civilized country in the world? Just last year, Arizona passed a law that limits abortions after 15 weeks. I support that law. That's where Arizonans find a reasonable place to draw the line. I support limits at the federal level too. Senator Lindsey Graham has proposed a 15-week bill with the common exceptions, and I support that. I believe in limits. Mark Kelly believes in no limits at all. I understand why he wants to lie about my position because his own, which is on the record, he sponsored that legislation up until birth. That is so truly radical. 80% of Arizonans are disgusted by that. So I'm going to represent the vast majority of Arizonans on this issue. He's proven that he can't.
Need a response.
It's nonsense. And what he's saying is absolutely not true. I've always been clear on this, that I support the restrictions and the protections that were allowed under Roe v. Wade. And abortion only happens, very late in pregnancy when there are serious issues. And folks, it's heartbreaking when this happens. And often the child is wanted. But my opponent, remember what he has said. I mean, he supports a national abortion ban.
I just told you I didn't.
Criminalizes, you're going to get your chance, that criminalizes this decision. He has said, and this isn't like years ago, he has said very recently that he wants to punish the doctors. He's called abortion demonic, a religious sacrifice. I don't even know what that means, folks. But what I'm doing is I am protecting your constitutional rights that you have lost because of rhetoric, like this.
But real quickly, where do you draw the line on late-term abortions?
Well, under Roe v. Wade, there were protections and there were restrictions that were allowed under that law. And late-term abortion in this country only happens when there is a serious problem. And, you know, that's what I support. And what he says about the legislation that I voted on is just not true. And it's nonsense. And he should go back and take a look and read this. I mean, he's a lawyer. This is legislation. He can go take a look at it.
Blake, you have said that you once espoused the federal personhood law. This is a quote from you, unqualifiedly pro-life from conception, and that it has been noticed that some of these more strident positions were taken off of your website. Some say that you scrubbed them from your website. What's going on with that?
I encourage people to go read my website now. It is still the most pro-life, most detailed agenda of any Senate candidate running nationwide. I'm pro-life. I'm proud to be pro-life. I will never run from that.
From conception?
I'm pro-life as a matter of conscience. I just told you what I believe the law should be. Right? In Arizona, as a voter, I support the 15-week law with all the exceptions. I believe in federal limits. I believe at a certain point, everybody of good conscience knows. At 5 months, 6 months, my gosh, 7 months, that is a baby. And we shouldn't be killing babies for no reason when they can survive outside the womb. And that's not what his legislation did. They said they were trying to codify Roe. No, it was so much more extreme than that. They wanted to impose legal abortion nationwide up until the moment of birth. And that is way too radical. That's not what Arizonans want. Common sense limits. Arizona has said 15 weeks makes sense. I think that makes sense.
And before we get to Mark Victor, real quickly, have you always supported the 15-week limit?
Well, Arizona just passed the law last year, and Senator Graham just introduced the bill last month.
Right. But my question is, have you always supported that kind of...
I couldn't support a bill 9 months ago if it was just introduced last month.
It's not the bill, it's the limit. Have you always supported that limit? That kind of limit?
I believe Arizona's got the right to make its laws. That's the whole point of reversing Roe versus Wade. And I believe in a federal backstop. I think at the federal level, we should not be allowing late-term partial birth abortion all the way up until the moment of birth, and except for to save the life of the mother. I believe in limits. Mark Kelly doesn't, and that's the choice that Arizonans face in this issue.
Mark Victor, please.
You know, Ted, this evasiveness from Blake Masters is exactly why you should have a principle and stick with it. You asked him specifically, did he scrub his website? And he said, you can go to my website now and look at it. That's evasion. That's an answer that, yes, I'm not anchored in principle. I'm anchored in principle. My positions have been exactly the same for 30 years. Look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what my personal position is on abortion, and I'm not going to tell you. We need a policy that recognizes that reasonable minds disagree on this issue. People disagree. There isn't an objectively right answer. And these politicians offer no special wisdom at all. This is why a one-size-fits-all solution is a terrible idea. We're going to be fighting about it forever. Congress should stay out of it. So I'm in favor of having hard questions like this resolved in the smallest jurisdictions. That's right. Mesa should pass a law that the people in Mesa like, and the people in Tempe should pass a law that the people in Tempe like. Abortion should never, anywhere, under any circumstances, be outlawed in the case of rape or in the case of health of the mother. We don't have enough time to get into this, but I've written extensively on this and many other issues on my website. Regarding abortions after viability, if we can keep the baby alive, we should. It's a win for the baby. It's a win for the pregnant woman. It's a win for the adoptive parents. There is no perfect solution here. We're going to be fighting about it forever. We need the best solution to get past it, and that's put it in the smallest jurisdictions. Let's stop fighting, and let's move on.
Let's talk about smaller jurisdictions. Should abortion laws be at the state level and not the federal level?
No, I think there should be a national law that protects the rights that women have to make this decision between them and their doctor. And let me be really clear about something you asked about, which was the personhood amendment. Now, folks, this is code. This is code for throwing women into jail. And that's what my opponent supports. Now, I think we all know guys like this. You know, guys that think they know better than everyone about everything. You know, you think you know better than women and doctors about abortion. You even think you know better than seniors about Social Security, and you think you know better than veterans about how to win a war. Folks, we all know guys like this, and we can't be letting them make decisions about us because it's just dangerous.
Respond, please.
I think states should decide, let the state legislatures wrestle with the tough question of how to regulate abortion early on. Texas is going to make slightly different decisions than California. It's going to make different decisions than Arizona. But I believe in a federal backstop. I don't think we should let California or Oregon let Planned Parenthood go in at 8 months and 30 days and sever spinal cords and dismember babies that his policy would allow. Unlimited abortion up until the moment of birth. He still can't articulate a clear limit. I believe in limits. Arizona has said 15 weeks is a reasonable place to draw the limit, and I agree.
I got to get a response to that, please.
Yeah, so, I mean, the protections and restrictions that were allowed under Roe v. Wade was the law of the land for over a century, or for 50 years. But what we have now here in the state of Arizona is a law from 1864. And it's exactly what my opponent, Blake Masters, wants.
But have you supported 6, 7, 8 month viability?
I have supported Roe v. Wade. You know, went into effect in 1973. This is a hard decision for women. This decision should be up to the woman with her doctor. Shouldn't be politicians like the guy to my left in Washington, D.C., making these decisions for you. I mean, he thinks he knows better than you. He thinks he knows better than doctors and women on abortion. I mean, folks, I think that's, that is a really bad place for us to be in when my opponent, Blake Masters, is making these decisions for women.
Blake, we'll start with you. Immigration reform. I hear border security mentioned a lot. You have mentioned border security. You want to secure the border. How would you know when the border is secure? How do we know when the border is secure?
Well, call me old-fashioned, but I think the correct amount of illegal immigration is 0. That's what federal law says. The problem is that Joe Biden and Mark Kelly are willfully ignoring federal law. They've surrendered our southern border. They've given it up to the Mexican drug cartels. We had operational control 2 years ago, and now it's just a complete disaster. They incentivize people to break the law. Illegal aliens, when they come here, they're supposed to be caught and deported back to their home country or back to some other country that wants them. But no, Joe Biden and Mark Kelly, they laid out the welcome mat. This is the greatest country in the history of the world. If you invite everybody to come here, you'll create a crisis. And so 5 million illegals, literally 5 million, have come here in the last 22 months. Joe Biden and Mark Kelly have welcomed them. When these people cross, they know not only will they not be deported, but they're given envelopes with cash, plane tickets. Here's a hotel room in Scottsdale. We treat these people better than we treat our own U.S. military service members. I find that shameful. 300,000 come through every month. It's a humanitarian disaster. The women and children are raped. The men are indentured servants, sold into some kind of slavery. And it's not just the people, it's the drugs, the fentanyl that's coming through. It's killing kids. We're losing 2,000 Arizonans every year to fentanyl. This stuff is poison. It's coming right there up through the southern border, and Mark Kelly and Joe Biden have not done a single thing to stop it. It is carnage. And so I think we should secure the border. That means a wall. It means doubling the size of Border Patrol. And it means let's get back to deporting people who try to break into our country, something that Mark Kelly routinely votes against.
We'll get to Mark Kelly in a second here. But Mark Victor, as far as immigration reform is concerned, walls, more border agents, what say you?
Ted, how long are we going to keep talking about this same problem? Administration after administration after administration, they're bickering about securing the border and spending money, but nobody ever gets it done. We need to get it done. I'm in favor of a comprehensive overhaul of the entire immigration policy. It doesn't have to be very confusing. We had a great immigration policy in this country in the late 1800s, early 1900s. In fact, we didn't even have a term, illegal immigration. There was just immigration. It wasn't a big deal. We welcomed immigrants to America. Most of the people who come to America, and I've been representing many of them over the last 28 years. The vast majority of them are great people. They come here to work, to pursue the American dream. But they should get nothing when they come here besides the right to peacefully pursue their happiness. Nobody has a right to live at the expense of another person. They should get no welfare or social programs at all. But we do need to immediately secure the border. Nobody has a right to aggress against anybody else, whether they're inside or outside the border. Let's try to keep the bad guys out. We should streamline the asylum process. It's ridiculous that it takes so long to get a reasonably simple hearing done. I am very pro-immigration. It's good for America. It helps our economy. We've got demographic issues as well. We need more younger workers. Can you imagine our situation? We got a huge labor shortage right now. We got lots of immigrants who want to work. We can't get a visa program so they can actually work. Let's get them to work. This is why Sheriff Hathaway in Santa Cruz County endorsed me, because I've got a plan. There is no perfect solution here, but we need a path to citizenship as well.
Okay,
I do not want to tear families apart who are here and working and are law-abiding. We should not be deporting them.
That is time. 90 seconds, Mark Kelly. Immigration, have you done enough as far as immigration concerns in Arizona, in the country?
You know, when I got to Washington, D.C., one of the first things I realized was that Democrats don't understand this issue. And Republicans just want to talk about it and complain about it, but actually not do anything about it. They just want to politicize that. And we heard this tonight from my opponent, Blake Masters. You know, he thinks he knows better than everyone about everything. And when it comes to border security, you know, I've been focused on this. And on immigration, yes, we need comprehensive immigration reform. We have tens of thousands of dreamers here in the state of Arizona that are as American as my own two kids. I've got one daughter lives in Tucson, my granddaughter lives in Tucson. I think of dreamers no different. You know, my opponent, Blake Masters, on the other hand, he said he would never offer citizenship to dreamers. I think it's mean and it's fundamentally un-American. We need comprehensive immigration reform in a lot of different ways. I talk to farmers and ranchers all the time, can't get the workforce they need under the existing visa programs. And they're really struggling. I mean, you look at Yuma and the food supply issues we have down there and the workforce issues of legal immigration, legal immigrants coming across the border to work here in the state of Arizona, adding so much to our economy. But this issue gets politicized over and over again from people like my opponent, Blake Masters.
Politicizing the issue, not understanding the issue. Respond, please.
Oh, I understand it very well. I understand that Mark Kelly supports open borders, and that's why we have them. He's the 50th vote in the U.S. Senate. Joe Biden needed his vote. Mark Kelly, a year ago, could have dug his heels in and said, Mr. President, I'm not supporting a single thing, not a single spending bill, not a single piece of your agenda, unless and until we get border security. Biden would have had to secure the border. Mark Kelly, if this is the result of Senator Kelly being focused on the border, my gosh, he's the most ineffective and worst senator of all time. The border's wide open. People are walking through by the hundreds of thousands. You know, if the Mexican drug cartels, if these terrorist narcos, if they could vote in this election, every single one of them would vote for Senator Kelly because they get what they want from him, which is a complete wide open border. It's complete free reign. And again, the fentanyl is killing our children. He's not doing a gosh darn thing to stop it.
Respond, please.
The fentanyl is out of control, and it's heartbreaking. And I've spent a lot of time down there on like Nogales and Yuma and Douglas. The head of CBP is Lupe Ramirez. And we've talked extensively about this. And we've talked about how this gets smuggled through the ports of entry really early in my term in the Senate. So you know what I did? Went back to Washington, and I got the money appropriated to rebuild our ports of entry. You know why? Because right now, if you go down there, it's 12 lanes in Nogales as an example. Only one of those lanes has the technology, the X-ray machine, that can detect the fentanyl. When we rebuild these ports of entry, because of the work I've done in the United States Senate and getting this money to Arizona, every single one of those lanes will have the technology. But the only way you can do this is through bipartisanship. And it's working together, working across the aisle to get things done like John McCain did. You know, my opponent, Blake Masters, he doesn't want to work with anybody. He doesn't even want to work with Republicans. You know, he calls Democrats psychopaths and that they're evil. That's not been the spirit of how Arizona senators work to the benefit of our state and our country.
Time on that, but I need a response from you on the idea of working with Democrats on cooperating across the aisle.
You might be able to work with Democrats like Sinema, Democrats like Joe Manchin. You can't work with Democrats like Bernie Sanders, Chuck Schumer, Mark Kelly. No, there's something very wrong with people who don't want to enforce federal law, who don't believe in borders. Apparently, they don't believe in our national sovereignty because they've turned over the entire border zone to Mexican drug cartels. And it is killing people. It is killing Arizonans. It's ruining our state. It's ruining our country. He's not doing a darn thing to stop it. And the Border Patrol understands this. Go ask a Border Patrol agent what they think of Mark Kelly. 90% of them will tell you they're disgusted by what he's failed to do. That's why the National Border Patrol Council endorsed me. The Arizona Police Association endorsed me. It's time to get back to law and order. Let's just even try. It'd be bad enough if they were trying to enforce federal law and failing, but they've just surrendered. They've thrown their hands up and thrown our southern border wide open. It's killing people. I'm sick of it.
45 seconds, Mark Victor. Is the border open right now, and has it been turned over to cartels?
Of course the border is open right now, and people can come through. There's no question about that. But the answer here is we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Yes, we can secure the border. We need to secure the border. It doesn't mean we have to build a wall. There may be other ways we can secure the border. Let's get a handle on who's coming in. But then let's let people in who aren't here for bad purposes. Let's welcome them. We are a nation of immigrants. We have a demographic problem right now. We need more younger workers. And also, just a quick point on civility. We need to get back to civility. We shouldn't be calling each other names and arguing across the aisle. I agree with what Senator Kelly said here. We need to work together. People who disagree still can be agreeable. Let's sit down and have an exchange of ideas and speak like gentlemen rather than arguing and calling each other names like kids in a sandbox.